Typically, we tell our students, well, one quote per page is about what you should have, not more. In a case study, it's perfectly appropriate to have 6 or 7 quotes, to have 2 pages of dialogue, because it's not your voice as the author that's important, it's the voice of the characters that you present in the case. Okay? When you write your case, decide what your case is about, what the story is that you want to tell, why you want to tell that story, and how you can tell it most effectively. And that is one, the story that you pick. And then secondly, do you tell this particular story best as a decision-forcing case, or is it an academic fictional case, a historic case, or does it become a role play or a simulation exercise? Okay? How do you get the point, your learning objectives, across best? So I have students and I have colleagues participating in these workshops saying, well, I want to write about Africa, or I want to write about stability operations, I want to write about the Kurdish question. I had a PhD student who wanted to write about the Kurdish question. And I said, well, that's not really a case. None of this is really a case. What about the Kurdish question do you want to address? So you use your case dilemmas to illustrate this. It's really about transitional justice. It's about corruption and resource governance, self-determination, religious integration, civil-military relations. These are concepts. Cases are about concepts and theories, and now you can draw this in, because what we want is we don't want to have an empty conversation. What would you do in this situation based on how you feel? No, we want to inform based on a theoretical conceptual background these decisions. So the heuristics that I mentioned early on should work in combination with the background and the framing that you use. So the story is not the key. The story is simply a vehicle to illustrate these policy dilemmas. Okay? So I'll give you an example that I used with undergraduate students. Most of you have read Lord of the Flies at some point, and most of you were required to read Lord of the Flies in English class. And then you're looking at the symbolism, and you're looking at the language and the grammar and whatever else. Okay? I've taught an undergraduate course, Introduction to Political Science, and we started, as you do with an Intro to Political Science, with political philosophy. So we discussed, I had the students read a little bit of Aristotle, a little bit of Hobbes, a little bit of Marx, and a little bit of Mill. And then I had them read Lord of the Flies, and I had to write a reaction paper. And all of a sudden, the characters took on Marxian or Hobbesian traits. Why? Not because I told them to, but because that's what I had provided. I had framed the book. Okay? So case studies don't work alone. Some do, but they really work well in the context of a class and in the context of other readings that you provide alongside the case. So when you're doing an exercise, you know exactly when to put the exercise in your syllabus. You know students have to have read this, and we have to have had this discussion before we can actually do the exercise. That's the same with the case. It's your job to frame it. Now, when you write the teaching notes, because anybody else should be able to use your case, you want to make sure that you provide those frames. So you say, alongside the case, you may want to assign this book or these 3 articles, or watch this movie, right, as a framing exercise. So the story is not it. The Kurdish question is not it. But it's something conceptual that you want to get across. So we had conversations. You want to talk about a particular instance where, let's say, George Bush and Colin Powell interaction. That's terrific. But what's really important is, what does this illustrate? It illustrates something about national security management. It may illustrate something about trust between the president and the commander-in-chief, or the supreme commander, or the joint chiefs of staff, or whatever it is, right? That's the larger issue. That's what you really want to get at with your case. The particulars are only a vehicle to illustrate the larger issues. First steps when you write your case: identify your actors, your issues, your dilemmas, and the story. So typically after day 1 or so of the workshop, this is what I send participants away with. Tomorrow, come with that. Think through this, come with that, and then in the workshop we develop this into a case. There's bias. As in any academic writing, there may be bias in a case. You may have a one-sided skewed information or data. So I wrote a case on private security contractors about 5-6 years ago. Even today, you look at the writings on the private security industry, it is biased. It is clearly negative about the industry. That's all fine and good, but that doesn't make a case. Because now I can at best ask the students, do you agree with this? So what do? I need to balance my case. Okay? So I have lots of information that criticizes the private security industry, but I don't have a lot of information that actually favors it. If I can't find any information, I have to get it from somewhere. Well, I went to the industry and I talked with people, conducting interviews, looking at websites, looking at trade publications, just to get quotes to offset some of the criticism. And it's not my purpose to offset the criticism. My purpose is to present a balanced case. Sometimes we have a vested interest in writing a case. Sometimes we have a vested interest in doing research. The student who wanted to write on the Kurdish question happened to be a Kurdish Turk whose father is a mayor in Kurdistan, in the Turkish part of Kurdistan, who is jailed by the Erdogan regime. And I said to that student, may not be a good idea to write on the Kurdish question. You are too close to your topic. Okay? So we need to find, and this happens a lot with the cases we're interested in and the research we're interested in, we need to be able to step away and present what we're working on in an unbiased fashion. And it helps to then look at the other side. Okay? So find information to present the underrepresented position. And then, like any good academic writing, share your case, share the interviews with folks. Make sure that they're not misrepresented. So those rules apply to case writing as well. When you're writing your case, here are the steps. Okay, start out with a summary of your case. What's your story? Who are the actors? What are the issues and dilemmas? What are your teaching objectives? What is the audience that you're going to use the case for, or the audiences? And in teaching notes, I've mentioned that already, it's perfectly appropriate to have a section for an undergraduate audience. This is what you do. If you were to teach this class in a humanitarian, this case in a humanitarian law class, this is what the readings you might assign. Okay? That's perfectly appropriate. You want to make your case available to the broadest audience, in my view. Okay? What are the takeaways? What would you like for students to take away having read this case or engaged in the simulation that you're running? And what are the implications of the dilemmas that you're presenting? And remember, as always, it's an academic case. You need to reference your sources just like you would in an academic paper, but you can use any of these. Academic articles, newspaper articles, videos, interviews, speeches. You can show YouTube videos, anything that helps you illustrate your case. As you are getting involved in case writing and you want to look at cases, it oftentimes helps to look at sample cases, then I have a couple of resources for you. Since the cases, the way we're developing them, are based on the Harvard Business School model, go to the Harvard Business School, look at their cases. If you want to download any of their cases, it's going to cost you. Of course, it's the Harvard Business School. Some of the cases that, including that security contractor case that I mentioned several times, that we have developed in the past were for the Center for Complex Operations. Those cases are available. The Institute for the Study of Diplomacy at Georgetown University has a tremendous case bank, well over 200 cases. on a really wide range of issues. You can go.
Literature there.
You what?
That may be useful for you.
Yeah. So you go there. You can, and they have a very sophisticated system. As an instructor, you can get the instructor's copy for free to look at it. Your students then pay. They pay per case. And then finally, and this is a program I had been involved in for 10 years from the beginning, National Security Studies program at Syracuse University we've developed about 40 plus cases. Those are available. You can look at the summaries of the cases. Any DoD audience can access those cases for free. You may need to send an email. But I would steer you toward those 4 resources for cases, and then obviously Rick, myself are available if you have specific questions. With that, I'll leave it in terms of the brief overview, wasn't all that brief, over case development, case writing, case teaching, and I'll be happy to take your questions. We have some time for questions, right?
Of course, we do. Absolutely. To include people on the phone, we know you're still there, so fire away if you got a question for Volker.
Professor Frank, thank you for a beautiful summary of best practices in writing case studies. Why is it, I have the suspicion, that your academic articles approach a good case study in some ways? You start out some of your articles with a story, as you have recommended in case studies. You want to give perhaps a balanced discussion in your academic analysis. Perhaps the academic writing is not so different from the case study approach, or is it?
It is, because I've only shown you paragraph 1. If you look at the other 20 pages, they're more standard academic writing, and I do make an argument. My purpose is just to draw readers in, to make it relevant. I believe that our academic writing should have relevancy. And so a story shows you the relevance of what you're writing, I think, fairly quickly. In general, and I've seen this with students and with colleagues who write case studies, because it really resembles more journalistic writing, improve their academic writing as well. We have a way, social scientists tend to restate the obvious and make it sound profound. And if we can get away from that and actually focus on what is important, and we can simplify what we're saying, it becomes more accessible. My purpose as an academic is obviously to write academic work based on research, but I'd like to make it accessible to more than 3 people. And that's what we're doing. In the whole tenure process, all this, the best journals, and the more sophisticated it sounds, and the more statistical stuff you throw at it, the more likely it is you're published in a top-ranking journal, but that nobody reads, and a lot of people who don't understand it fully. I don't want to do that. Absolutely.
A question about choosing the framing, because I can see that with different individuals, they are going to observe a picture, or they're going to read a paragraph, and they are going to have a different point of view. So my sense is that you don't mind if people have different points of view, and then you will work this out through the discussion going on. But you make some choices as to what you would like, or where you would like that discussion to go.
Absolutely. The different viewpoints will always come out. If you present a case by itself, then different viewpoints are more or less all you have to go by. Okay? If you present a case in a classroom context, then students have something else to go by, just like that Lord of the Flies example that I provided to you. So if I have a colleague developed a case on wartime rape. Okay? So now imagine I'll teach that case in a stability operations course. I teach the same case. I teach that case in a women's issues course, feminism course, gender course. I teach this case in a developing policy or economic development course. Okay? I'll have the same case with the same stories, but the context within which they're reading it, the students are reading it, is different. So they will tease, you still have an opinion and you still respond to what you're reading, but you're also reading it within that context. So the case that I wrote on private security contractors is a lot about outsourcing. And to what extent should we outsource security or military functions to the private sector? Okay? So if I'm teaching this in a national security course, I will have something on Iraq and contractors in Iraq, potentially. If I'm teaching this in a law class, I will have something on the regulations of the private security industry as background readings. If I teach it in a business school course, I will have something on outsourcing. Okay? Or I have all of that. But it's the same case, but it becomes a vehicle to illustrate issues related to outsourcing, issues related to national security, but for instance, how much intelligence should we share with private individuals or private agencies. And if I teach it in a government class, then a public administration class, then it really is about the cost-benefit analysis of who provides this more cheaply, and is national security, can we really apply the traditional cost-benefit approach to national security all the way through to top-level, top-secret classified information and intelligence. Okay? So that's how the framing shapes your conversation. Scott.
You spoke very briefly about the actors map and how you actually use that to define everybody's interests and the direction that they might go. And as you present the case and the dilemma, what potential area they might lean towards, either for or against it. Do you actually have a standard template that you use for that, or is it just kind of like a discussion, a threaded discussion as you go?
That depends on your case. I don't have a standard format. I just made a note. I think we should add that to this. For those of you who can access the Blackboard side, I have and maybe we can pull it up even. I have a presentation I used this morning on developing teaching notes. Okay. You may want to look at that. I have a couple of examples of actors maps in it. But basically, the one that I described that we've done that's related to interest and desired outcomes and measures is think of a matrix. Mm-hmm. You have your actors on the first column, and you have your interests in the top row, and then you would see each cell describes the interests and outcomes for each actor. Okay. And that helps as a snapshot. There are actors maps where you look at, you can, what I call a relational actors map, mm-hmm. when you look at the relationships between these actors. Do you have actors that are in conflict? Do you have actors that are supporting each other? Do you have key actors? Do you have some supplementary actors? For instance, if you have a civil war, you may have the two conflicting parties with arrows pointing at each other. If you have a genocide, you may have the larger actor with an arrow pointing to the small actor there. This would be what you're seeing there. Would be your maybe Civil War conflict map, and you see where the interveners are coming from, and then you can fill in these. You know, this is a generic one that might work for a Civil War type scenario, and now you fill in who the actors are, but it allows you to spatially put people together. You know, for instance, how large is a coalition that supports one of those actors. Okay? And can you pull up the other one?
Which one?
The one, the next one.
You mean the next slide?
The next slide, yeah, the next slide. This one. Okay, that's a similar actors map, but different. That might be more the genocide type actors map, right? But it shows you immediately where the actors are, who are the relevant actors, who do we need to take into account. Now, if you have something like this, and you were to develop a simulation out of it, you can also see who your key roles are. Okay, does that help?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's available for all of you can't see on the phone. That's available on the Blackboard side.
Yep, they're all there. I know in your earlier slides, and I'll go back to it, Volker, you've also got at least a description of what you talked us through the last couple of days on a matrix that showed interest measures. I mean, you've got a slide, it's not in a matrix format, but it shows exactly what it's going to do. Go ahead. Other questions?
Anybody on the phone, any questions? Eric? Eric has given up.
Yes, sir.
Oh, he's still there.
First of all, please tell me where your actor mapping things are on the Blackboard. I'm looking right now, but
Right. If you go to, and I'll send a note to everybody, if you go to both monthly workshops, monthly virtual workshops, we've got it in there. There's readings, there's case studies, there's the one I just showed you was actually, let me go back to it real quick to refresh my memory. The bottom line is they're all there. Whatever's, so if I go to, I'm looking at it now, you've got workshops, you've got monthly virtual seminars. If I go to workshops right now, this is the inaugural workshop and monthly virtual seminar, case writing and teaching, Dr. Volker Franke. And then we've got how to develop teaching notes. That's the one that was in.
Yes.
So there's the how to develop teaching notes. I don't know if you're following along there. Then you've got developing teaching notes. It's that PowerPoint presentation that we just showed a portion of.
all good. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Volker, I liked it very much. I really don't have a comment. Just straightforward. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. That's unusual that you don't have a comment. That's good.
Yeah, Volker, hey, this is Mark Vaughn at IMSG. One question I have for you would be, once you've got your case study written and sort of produced, do you do any kind of screening or test run with other faculty members or other SMEs?
What we've done in the past, and that's actually an excellent question because we need to figure out how we're going to do this with our case studies. What we've done in the past is we had a peer review process for cases. So they would be sent out to a panel of 2 or 3 reviewers, just like an academic article. And then they come back and they go through revisions. And then after that, we actually have in the past classroom tested them. This was when we developed case studies for DoD at the Syracuse University. We classroom tested them before they were submitted to DoD. All of them had to be classroom tested. So we could certainly make sure that we use a War College or a Kennesaw State classroom and see how it plays out. That everything that we publish on the web and make available has been tested and it has certainly been reviewed. That's part of what I will do is come up with a review process for this. And the more we can build a case writing community, the more obviously we all can chip in, and I will call on you to help us with the reviews. I think that would be very, because every time you review a case, every time you discuss a case with someone, your own skills improve, right? Because you look at others' dilemmas and you realize, oh, I need to do that in my own case. And it's the same thing with our academic writing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it just occurred to me we can form a special committee within PKSOI as well to assist with doing these sorts of things. Why not? Everybody's going to sign up, I know. Everybody in this room.
Get the sheet out and send it around.
Exactly. Any other questions, comments, good ideas? Signing up? Help us out?
Hey, Dennis Cahill here from Civil Affairs Branch.
Yes.
Go.
Again, I'd like to thank Volker as well. I took a couple of programs up at Harvard Kennedy School, and I really enjoyed the case study method that they use there. And I've been hoping to write a case study or two on my own to illustrate some of the challenges we have with civil affairs, and as a teaching tool for commanders to better understand the roles and capabilities of civil affairs in their operations. And I did, at the seminar at the PKSOI, I did volunteer to write a case study on the civilian Afghanistan, which I participated in. And these notes, these slides are very helpful in getting me started on that. The question I had, though, is there another form of case study that might be, what do you call it, people might also write that's not exactly this format? And I'm looking at two case studies I have on my desk, or two books I have on my desk. One is called Case Studies on Field Operations of Military Government Units, training packet number 7. It was written published by the U.S. Army Provost Marshal General School in 1950. And the other is a book I got from the PKSOI called Local Ownership and Security, Case Studies of Peace Building Approaches. And what these two books have is just it's sort of a compilation of stories, somewhat, or examples of events that took place in various countries. It's sort of illustrative of things that happened and what particular players did to, I guess, take care of a challenge. I guess what I'm missing, though, it seems, if these were in fact training materials, I must be missing the training packet that supports the instructor and the question.
Well, if Volker has described best practices as they will be in PKSOI and elsewhere in the future, we're catching up. So maybe that's the short answer that I'll probably be fired for saying, but it's all good.
Now, the key component that the cases we want to develop revolve around are the dilemmas. And so simply a 100-page long historical account is not going to be a case study for us the way we see it. Because, you don't need to sift through and then have lengthy conversations. We have that already. We have enough of that, I think. So what's really important is maybe go through those, and if you can find some dilemmas in these stories, then we can recount the story and retell it, but with a different frame and a different focus.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis, and we haven't forgotten you, and we're obviously just getting our monthly virtual seminars online, and after our big teaching push in April and May, we're now getting all this back on track, and we know you made a commitment there, and we will reach out to you and others for monthly virtual seminars and case study writing, et cetera, et cetera.
And what we should probably, before you end it, should probably put a plug in that we will have, I will come up sometime August, where we haven't looked at the date, to do another workshop.
Right.
So clear your calendar for August for now. But we'll announce this. We'll look at the dates, and hopefully by the end of the week, maybe even we'll have dates. Okay.
Could I also just say thanks very much for Volker? Very intense 3 days, and we're only halfway through the seminar itself. This was superb. For those on the phone and everybody else, we've captured this. Hopefully it's all working on your Blackboard Collaborate, and within a few hours, it takes a little bit of time, you'll be able to, and everybody on this system that we've put on there through our SO2 working group, thank you very much, Carter Oates and company, will be able to access this video, and we've got high-speed video thanks to Chris Brown, and next monthly virtual seminar to be announced. I know Bill Flavin's got a twinkle in his eye on what that's going to be, but we got to figure out that. And then, yes, we do plan to invite Volker back for another 3-day seminar, probably as soon as August. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. Excellent.
Appreciate you folks for taking us a while and all this.
Okay, thank you. Let me stop this recording. All right. Well done,
Good.
sir.
Yes.
Very well done.
We'll see how it comes out.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll come out just fine.
But I think good. Good. Oh. I am Mike. I am Mike. Yeah. Always do this.
You haven't been over to the faculty.
I'm sorry, what?
And the Dickinson faculty over there. It's pretty sad they have you.